Hello, I have quite a fun video for you guys today. I wanted to play Final Fantasy XIII for a while now, and I thought now would be a great time to play it, and I'll just make it clear, I did not plan for my 13th video to be Final Fantasy XIII, I promise. So, join me as I give a bit of an insight into the game for those who haven't played it before, and I'll be sharing my thoughts on the entire game overall, what I liked about it, and what I thought could have been better. You know, the usual things in my reviews, or I guess any review really. Final Fantasy XIII released back in 2009 on the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, later being released internationally in 2010, eventually being released on PC in 2014. Immediately from what I've experienced playing other Final Fantasy titles, it feels like it took partial themes from previous games and nicely tied it together in a largely refined experience. But before I carry on, 99% of people watching this video aren't subscribed, which probably means that you aren't, so please consider subscribing if you haven't already. I would love to earn your support and continued involvement as I continue to grow my channel, so why not start today? But I guess I should really crack on with this review. Right, so let's quickly run through our party here. The main protagonist is Lightning, who is a former Guardian Corps soldier. We start the game as Lightning and we don't really get to explore much about her early on. What we do know is that she's just all action, not a whole lot of talk. Reminds me of a certain someone, which I thought was fine and I can appreciate it, but I think having played other titles, I would have liked to have seen her explore more of a vulnerable side early on, outside of the stuff with her sister Sarah, but later on she really opens up. I don't mind the cold, distant characters, but getting to explore their thoughts and vulnerabilities is also great. Next we have Saz, who is also alongside Lightning when starting the game. I would talk more about his background, but it would slightly spoil the game, so I'll obviously refrain from doing so. I really like his inclusion in this game. He keeps things grounded in the group and also acts as a balance, keeping things in check. Oh, and he also has a chocobo chick that hides in his hair. Shout out chocobos. I should also mention Snow, who is the leader of a group called Nora, which I guess is like a neighborhood watch group or a vigilante group, albeit ones that fight soldiers. He's the fiance to Lightning's sister Sarah, and early on our story with him revolves around saving her. A lot of our time with Snow is him dealing with the pressure and responsibility of being a hero, which I thought was really interesting. It's a stark contrast of Lightning's experience, but also could provide insight into how Lightning may internally be thinking. I also think there's a really interesting dynamic here that isn't explored too much, with the relationship between Lightning and Snow being tense given Lightning's view on the relationship between Sarah and Snow. I thought it added a sense of realism to the relationship, obviously not the whole hero stuff, but the difficulty of dealing with relationships. Rounding out the main party is also Vanille and Hope, two youngsters who, despite their youth, prove to be valuable additions to the team. Starting with Hope, he's a very interesting character. He's quite reserved within the team, largely given the events that happened at the start of the game, and obviously being very young. He has quite a lot to deal with and come to terms with. I think his development is one of the more interesting in the game, even if some of the dialogue is a bit too cliche at times. Vanille, on the other hand, is quite engaging with the group and reassures Hope, acting as a support system to him. They get to know each other quite early on in the game, and it's really nice to see them grow acquainted with each other and trust one another. Vanille is again quite an interesting character, one who bears quite a bit of guilt for her actions and how things turned out. Actually, I lied. We have one more character in the party. Fang joins our group in the later half of the game, reuniting Lightning and Hope with Snow when they make their way to Palom Polom. Wow, is that a difficult word to say? We first get introduced to Fang early on as part of the cavalry, which isn't expanded on initially, but her story alongside Vanille is very deep and rich. Fang is quite interesting. She's determined about what she wants to do, but is also ready to confront the team about their differences at any moment's notice, and will bear the weight of heavy decisions all on her own. The story I found to be quite interesting. It takes a few minutes to become engaging and admittedly to understand, but once it clicks, I think it's actually quite decent. I'll attempt to summarize it because if I found it a little confusing, then other first time players of the game will likely find it confusing as well, which, by the way, if I am wrong or you'd like to add anything, please let me know. So there are two worlds, Cocoon and Pulse. Cocoon is kind of like a hollow shell of a place where humans and Fal'Cie live. Fal'Cie are kind of like gods. Pulse is the actual planet where the other people and Fal'Cie live. Fal'Cie brand humans to do their bidding, in turn making humans LC, same thing. In the event the task is successfully completed, the person marked is granted eternal crystal sleep. If they fail, they become Seath, pretty much like zombies. To avoid dragging this video out for an unnecessarily long time, basically we fight the governments of these respective worlds and uncover the truth in order to save ourselves and the world, challenging destiny along the way. I'm sure there are already many channels that have fully gone through and explained the story in much greater detail than I ever could, but you get the idea. Quite a lot happens in this game and we're caught in the middle. The story obviously has its deep fantasy themes, but also deals with trauma, betrayal, and a desire to keep going and uncover the truth in a world that continues to be brainwashed and fear anything that goes against the norm. The action sequences are flashy, refined, and exciting, fighting. What I did appreciate was that the story mainly revolves around many different groups. Partway through the game, Lightning and Hope press on and Vanille and Saz go a separate way, eventually leading to the groups being brought together once again. Throughout all this, Snow is determined to get Sarah out of the crystal, and we learn more about the government and how they're deceiving normal people. In terms of the gameplay, I don't know how to describe it other than the bare bones of a turn-based system, but only to some extent, as you only control the party leader but can choose all of your party's playstyles, which is something I'll cover momentarily. I thought there was good use of the ATB systems, which develop alongside you and your skills. As mentioned before, the groups rotate so much that you play as multiple characters, so it doesn't really feel like you're only experiencing one story. The use of items being a free action instead of being a dedicated turn was a nice change of pace and really appreciated. What I thought was quite a unique feature in this game was the rotation of paradigms. In other games, the skills you unlock are just universally accessible and allow you to have your own playstyle, but this game does it a little differently. Instead, it's almost like a class system where you choose a playstyle and you level up to unlock specific skills and benefits like increased health and magic damage. This allows you to mix and match quite well, often rotating throughout fights whether to reapply buffs, heal characters, or deal damage. I thought this was a very fun way to switch up the gameplay experience and actively engage the player a bit more instead of just having it all be under one style. The actual action throughout the story was quite flashy, but it's not all in your face unlike other games. It's slowly built upon and is neatly blended in between lots of exploration and conflict, which I think helps to highlight the difference in experience in situations the groups find themselves in. There was actually quite a bit of customization in the game. The leveling system was good. It's not anything like the materia system from Final Fantasy VII or the sphere grids from Final Fantasy X, but I thought it was quite expansive, albeit simple. You get points from completing fights and killing enemies. These points then go into unlocking either new skills or benefits like the health and magic bonuses mentioned earlier. It doesn't require too much thought, but it's more of a balancing act given that you have many different paradigms to work with. Also, the cost of later upgrades is quite expensive, so I'd recommend taking the time to fight everything along the way to give yourself an easier time later on. The side content doesn't really open up until chapter 11, which in itself is fine. It allows the immediate focus of the gameplay experience to be on the story and working to engage the player, which it does very well. I think the side content ever so slightly takes your focus away from the main story experience. The downside to this is that the grind required can become quite exhaustive, resulting in the story experience towards the end of the game becoming an afterthought because you're so focused on grinding points for upgrading your Crystarium. There really wasn't much challenge early on, or at least until chapter 4. Wow, was that fight unexpected. If you're familiar with this game, then you know exactly what fight I'm talking about, but yeah, that was the first time I actually had multiple attempts before beating the boss, and I think this fight really opens you to mix and match with the paradigms to move forward with the game. Past this chapter, the challenge is real. The game heavily relies on your understanding of the paradigms, rotating buffs, healing, and damage. I found that the Eidolons found throughout offered ample challenge for where they were, considering you're also on a timer throughout these fights. The later parts of the game is where the challenge really increases and forces you to put time aside to grind and improve your stats and options available. I don't know what else I can use to describe the environmental design other than incredible. The art style was fantastic, world design was expansive, linear, but open enough to widely explore areas while moving forward throughout the game. These areas also have chests that you can loot and enemies to fight. The loot for the most part is fine, it's largely just consumables and items to sell or use in upgrading. Sometimes items can be accessories or weapons, so it's always worth looting these chests. The audio mix felt a little quiet throughout the entire game. I'm not sure if it was undertuned, but I felt like I had to be more attentive to make sure I picked up everything. The actual voice acting on display is quite good. I think there were some strong performances. I was a fan of Lightning's voice actor's performance and surprisingly Vanille's voice actor as well. I think this specific moment was what really sold me on the voice acting and solidified it for me.
You think you die? And that's that? You think you die and everything will be sugar and rainbows?
Then what can I do? What do you want from me? If I can't live or die, what do you want me to do?
Don't ask me. You figure it out.
I don't know!
To work alongside the good voice acting was an even better soundtrack. The music in this game was amazing, but you can always expect the music to deliver in a Final Fantasy game. The music that accompanies the boss fights was excellent, and even just moving around the world you could hear some really good music. Now, as much as I've praised the game, there was one very large issue. The performance was terrible, so much so that I had to download a mod that fixed the stuttering and screen tearing at high resolutions. I think for a studio as renowned as Square Enix, there should be no issues with porting a game to PC, but I was genuinely impressed that it was so poorly carried out. Thankfully, once I installed the mod, the performance was flawless. I thought I'd look around and see if people were able to determine what caused the problem. Part of the performance issues was caused by the game's hot plugging feature, as the game is constantly looking for a controller, inverts, so if you plug one in, you solve part of the issue, which for me was the stuttering, but I still had the issue of screen tearing, so I opted to download the mod to ensure I wouldn't have to change my settings for one game, which in itself is fine if it also didn't have some of its own issues. My other issue, which is a lot smaller, is that the camera can sometimes be awkward when colliding with objects around you. This causes the camera to either become locked or invert, so I found I was almost struggling to realign the camera in some moments. It's nothing that has any sort of impact on the overall experience of the game, but it's something I found and thankfully isn't really much of an issue now with newer games. Would I recommend? Yeah, however, I would not recommend playing on PC just because it's so troublesome to get it sorted and not have any issues. If you would like to play it, I recommend playing it on the PS3, seeing as it's not out on the newer PlayStation consoles, likely due to the engine difficulties, although Xbox players can play through backwards capability, so at least they can have an easier time accessing the game. I don't think it needs a remaster in all honesty. I think visually it's fine, the cutscenes and environmental design are immaculate, but I think if the performance issues could have been ironed out when porting it to PC, then it would have been an overall amazing experience. Now, I was considering playing the other two games, but given the performance issues, I don't know if I will play them if the issues still persist on these other games, which is probably likely if the same engine was used during the development of this game, which is a shame honestly, because looking past that, the game is honestly really enjoyable. And with that, I think I can comfortably bring this review to an end. As a whole, I've really enjoyed playing this game, even with the issues I mentioned. I think it's a fun experience. Thank you for making it this far into the video, I really appreciate it. If you like, consider liking the video, it would really help me out as I continue to produce these reviews for you guys. Hope you've all enjoyed this video, I hope you all have a good day, and who knows, maybe I'll see you for the next video.